Hey guys, and welcome to Money Talks News, the podcast. We're making you richer one day at a time. This episode, we're talking about how to retire into a life you'll love. You know, most people expect to retire one day, of course, and while they may have images of their future selves perfecting their golf game or hitting Wimbledon-worthy serves, let's face it, there's only so much golf and tennis you can play before you become really bored. In fact, if you don't find some type of purpose beyond work after you retire, you could literally be at risk of dying sooner, or so says some surveys. So today we're talking to Nick Yeoman, CFP and president of Yeoman's Consulting Group. Hello, Nick.
Hi, Stacy. So glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Welcome aboard. And so today we're going to talk about a new type of retirement. Nick's going to help us with that. And this type of retirement is one in which you find passion and purpose. You stay engaged, and best of all, you stay alive. And by the way, Nick, just so you know, that happens to be my prime directive. Staying alive is number one on my list of things to do.
Well, that's fantastic. I'll make sure your wife knows.
Thank you. And you know, by the way, Nick, I am 68 years old, so I'm theoretically a candidate for retirement. Why? What about you? What do you do for a living? I assume that you're a financial advisor. Is that true?
Sure. Yeah. So we are an investment advisory firm. And what we do is we've labeled ourselves as your retirement coach. We believe that coaching people through that transition into retirement and maintaining that retirement life is really important. And many times people can look back in their life and think of a coach. Maybe it was a PE coach or a sports coach. For me, I was a wrestler for about 13 years. And I think about the impact that coaches had on my life. And so what we've done is we've taken financial planning and financial advising and really transformed it into retirement coaching.
So you deal with a lot of people in my situation. You deal with a lot of people my age.
Yeah, our average client is between 55 and 80 years old. Okay. So it's really that transition, in those last few years before you retire and then maintaining that retirement life.
And so is it difficult to deal with? Because you sound like you're much younger than that.
Yeah.
But you have lots of experience with people my age.
Yeah. I might be an old soul, but my dad started a firm about 41 years ago, and this will be my 22nd year of practice, and I'm getting ready to turn the ripe old age of 44.
Puppy.
Oh, wow. That makes Nick the youngest person on this podcast right now.
Why, how old are you, Miranda?
Older than 40. Well, I'm 44 right now.
And how old are you? Aaron, you just turned 50, didn't you?
Yeah.
Well, you're all wet behind the ears as far as I'm concerned. So, Nick, I was listening to your podcast today, as a matter of fact, when I was riding my bicycle. What's it called?
Yeah, Coffee with Your Retirement Coach.
Okay, cool. And I was listening to you guys talk about this stuff, but let me get back on topic here. Some Miranda doesn't get pissed because she may lose notes. Okay, so generally speaking, I remember when my dad retired, and he retired pretty early. I think he was 60-ish. He worked for the government, hated his job, and he did a lot of gardening. And they went, they bought a trailer and they went around, and went around the United States and camped and stuff like that. That's what most people do when they retire. I mean, what's wrong with that? Just hanging out, watching Fox News. What my dad ended up doing. Yeah, but anyway, just hanging out. What's wrong with that? That's what people look forward to doing, right? Just relaxing.
Yeah. Well, you know what? There is an element of relaxation, right? And that so many people, as they get ready for retirement, they look forward to. But the reality is, as we look back and the Bob Hope generation, the greatest generation, right? We look back to that older generation and we know that life expectancy was so different. Our quality of life and our health was so different. It was one thing when you lived a couple of years after retirement and maybe you did a last cruise, your home was paid off, and you sat on your rocking chair on the front porch with a glass of lemonade, which sounds great, and then you died a couple of years later. Well, over the last 100 years, we've added 30 extra years of life. And I'm willing to bet, Stacy, and I don't know your dad, but I'm willing to bet that you are younger at your age than he was at the same exact age.
Nick, I'm basically 14. mentally. But yes, I am much younger than my dad was at his age. At least I think so. When you get to be my age, you start thinking about how when your dad started breaking down and everything, you know. But my dad was driving a truck with a trailer when he was 75. But I think I'm healthier than he was then. You know why? I have no kids. That's why. I have no one to entertain but myself and my wife.
Yeah, that's probably a big part of it, right? But, I've got 3 teenage daughters. I'm going whiter, in the head by the minute.
Oh, no doubt. That sounds really stressful.
Stressful, but we're having a blast.
Good.
Yeah. So, when I think about what real retirement is, I think we've got it wrong. Okay. Retirement, that word in and of itself was made up back in the 1920s. Before that word didn't even exist. There was retire, and the root word for retire was that you would retire to your chambers. You would pull away.
Okay.
You would go away. You would, basically be gone. Well, who wants to be put away, right? And so what we're trying to do is help people understand retirement's not really an age. It's a phase of life. And really it's your thoughts on life. So if I was to look at retirement, it's not do nothing at age 65. It's doing the right things. It's doing the things you care about that you're called to do. Why stop work if you love it? And so I think there's so much today, you look at Fidelity's website or, Schwab or all these wonderful, great companies, and they're all trying to help you identify your number. And they're talking about like the number you've got saved in your retirement accounts, your 401ks and your IRAs. And that's all important and good. But really, what is the money for? And that's why, things like AI and which I think, again, wonderful tools, they don't help people really understand how you match that 401k and that number to what your purpose, calling, and passion is.
You know what's weird, Dick, is that I'm listening to you talking, I'm thinking about, I should be retired. I mean, using air quotes, should be retired. And I've been giving people financial advice for 40 years. And I'm like, when you retire, blah, blah, blah. And I think my dad retired as soon as he could and blah. And it's like, and so here I sit at 68, no plan to retire whatsoever. And really never even thought much about it because, it's, what else am I going to do? My wife is younger than me and she's in the middle of her career. And so I just keep working, but it makes me feel kind of guilty. Like I'm supposed to be playing tennis or golf, And so
not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah. Well, there isn't, and there's nothing wrong with continuing to work. Also, it's weird. It is weird because it's like retirement's not necessarily something you have to do, and yet you aim your whole life at it. When I reach age X, I will stop working, and yet that's not necessarily the case, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that's kind of funny you say that because like I actually have no retirement plans. Like, I mean, I invest, I do the things like if I had to retire, I could retire, but I have no plans for retirement. I joke around about like, what am I going to retire from? Like this life that I have, like I like my life. So why would I want to retire from it? And I think a lot of that has to do with our shift as well in mindset and some of the things Nick is talking about. If you've been able to create for yourself a life that you enjoy, there is no need to like have some sort of official type retirement.
Yeah. And I think, as you were talking about your dad, Stacy, I was thinking about my dad. So his name's Randy. And so in the office, we call him Randy, but everywhere else it's Dad. But here's the thing. He is in better shape physically than he's been in the last 40 or 50 years. He's got a
How old is your dad?
He's 65. He'll be 66 this year.
Oh my God, your father's younger than me. I find myself saying stuff like that a lot.
Yeah. Well, you've got the right to. You earn the right to say things like that. But
if it makes you feel better, my dad's older than you, Stacy.
Oh, thank you. I didn't know there was somebody older than me. I'm happy. Anyway.
Yeah. So, here's the deal. My dad, he skis all over the world. He dives with sharks. He does liveaboards. He was doing Krav Maga, and he's into fighting. He was also the inducted in the Hall of Fame for coaching wrestling. Very active, right?
Holy cow. Is your dad Chuck Norris?
Yeah, right? And
like
so, the older he gets, the running joke in my family, the more of a risk taker he becomes. We're waiting for dad to show up on the X Games on a skateboard as his next adventure, right? But he's still retirement coaching today. He'll never stop. He loves it. He loves helping people. There's so much purpose behind that. Why would he stop? Even if he's economically able to, why would he stop doing something he feels called to do?
Well, okay, now let's circle back here for a minute, because what we're all describing is we're so cool that our jobs are so awesome that we're never going to quit working, and we're the perfect retirees who will never retire, and blah, blah, blah. But what about people who hate their damn job? What about people who work on an assembly line, and for whatever reason, like my dad worked for the government, and boy, he was counting the minutes till he could get his pension. So what about people like that? What's going to prevent them from watching Fox News all day? I mean, how are you going to become passionate about something? How do you develop that sort of, to find passionate purpose? Easy to say, but how do you go about doing it?
Yeah, well, step one is we find out where you're located, and we show up at your house and we cut your cable line. So we start there.
That's great.
All right. So it's one of the added values of our firm. We help you cut the cord. But really, we have a discovery process, and there's a lot of firms out there that have some great processes. But ours, we call it the map. Okay. And what we're wanting to do is get the husband and wife on the same page. And, we have this idea of, let's create a living legacy today. Let's not think about the legacy when you die. What does it look like to design the life that you're living in such a way that you would create a legacy while you were alive? And let's look at the qualitative part of your retirement life. So if we were to look at it, what does your health look like? What does your relationship life look like? Your community involvement, be it church or even volunteering to coach or mentor. What does that look like? Where would you rate it, 1 to 10? And having that discovery conversation. And what's really interesting, when I did this exercise with my wife, I thought we were going to be so much more on the same page than we were. When it comes to values, yes. When it comes to faith, yes. When it comes to money, we're both very frugal people, yes. But where we discovered something that was so different was our view of time. My wife, she's incredible, okay? She's got a master's in counseling. She's almost got me fixed, okay? Like she's awesome. She volunteers. She helps raise our 3 wonderful, wonderful kids. And when I look at how she sees time, her short-term goals are like next week, next month, right? That's a short-term goal for her. My short-term goals are 3 months or even a year. My long-term goals are 3 and 5 years. Her long-term goal is the end of the quarter or the end of the school year. So we looked at our time as being so different, but here we are trying to design these lives that we love. And I see the same thing transcend to people that are 59, 60, 61 years old as they're looking at to retirement. And the 2 spouses, the husband and wife, they sit down and they're looking at how they view time and how they view the quality of their relationships and all these incredible markers is what I would call them, only to identify that the relationship life, especially typically for the husband, he ranks it 2 out of 10, 3 out of 10. The wife, she ranks it, 8 out of 10. We look at community involvement and it's, 4 out of 10 or 6 out of 10. So then the discussion is, what should we do to now move those numbers higher, closer towards the 10? And we start mapping out literally a game plan so that you have improved relationship life. You have improved community involvement life. You have improved, even health, those conversations are probably 70% of the conversations we have today. It's not the portfolios. It's not the retirement accounts.
Well, Nick, I want to stop you there. And I don't mean to put you on the spot because we haven't talked about, I'm just talking to Nick for the first time as you guys are listening to this podcast. But can we walk through some of those questions? I want our listeners to understand the kind of thing you're talking about. In other words, I want you to ask these questions and have them go through, answer them in their own minds, and we can answer them here too. I mean, what? So I know, and like I said, I know you don't have this questionnaire in front of you, and I assume that it takes a long time to do. But can you just ask me a few basic things that help me decide? Because I don't know what the hell I want to do. I mean, other than what I'm doing right now, working. But I'm not really sure how I would answer these questions. Ask me a few.
Yeah, sure. Well, why don't we start with the category of health? Because health is wealth, right?
Okay.
I know a lot of people with a lot of money, but they have no health. And if you don't have health, you don't have, typically that health, that happy and that contentment. So let's start there. So one, we would typically ask, how old are you today?
Okay, so I'm 68.
And how old do you think you'll be at your COD? Do you know what your COD is?
No.
Your checkout date.
Well, how the hell am I going to know that? I'm gonna guess 180, or it could be this weekend. I don't know. I'm going to say 85 because that's how old my father lived.
Yeah, you know what's interesting? We start that conversation and it's amazing. I'd easily say 9 out of 10 people are able within 5 seconds to give me a number.
Really?
Really?
Well, that's crazy.
Well, the crazy thing is, how many of them might be right? We don't know, right? We don't know. No one knows, right? But we've got to plan at least our direction. We've got to plan, with that in mind. Now, the next questions that we start asking are, how would you rate your health life, your overall health life?
I'm going to go 8 out of 10. I mean, for a person my age, I'm very healthy.
Yeah, and I think that's wonderful. As we start getting older, we've heard over the years, I'm old, I need help. My dad's life motto is, I'm old, I can help. And one of the ways you got to do that is staying healthy. So we would have you rate that. And then we would say, if you're, as an example, let's just say, Stacy, that you said you were a 4 out of 10. That's where you put yourself. Okay. The follow-up question then is, what would it take to get you to move from a 4 to a 6 or a 4 to a 7?
Yeah.
Right?
I have to eat better, get more exercise. Okay.
Right. So we have these conversations. And so then we have you rate, how would you rate your diet 1 to 10? How would you rate your exercise 1 to 10? How would you rate your relationship with your primary care doctor 1 through 10? How would your kids rate your health 1 through 10? How would your spouse rate your health 1 through 10? If you can make one radical difference in your health in the next 12 months, what would it be?
This is really fascinating stuff. And now I kind of see how this is going now, how, the purpose of these questions.
The coaching with your retirement.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what we're driving here is that most of the time we're living in, as Dan Sullivan, the strategic coach, he would say, you're living in the gap. You're living in a place that you really don't want to be. And it's like, you can see the horizon, but you can never get there. So what is your horizon? What is the thing that you want to move towards? And what we find is that as people start making these incremental changes in their health, well, they find out really if they could achieve a 6 in their overall health, they identify now that it's possible that they can move it to an 8. They've identified that, really if they're working out maybe 1 or 2 times a week, and we say, you know what, it would really increase your health if you can move it to 4 times a week. Next thing you know, they're at 4 times a week and feeling great. You know what? I think I could do 5 or 6 times a week. If we could do one thing, as an example, here's one of the most common ones I get. It's, I want more energy so I can spend better quality time with my grandchildren.
Okay.
If you have no health and you don't have energy even to keep up with the grandkids, that bothers a lot of people. Or you and your wife had these amazing travel plans. Someday, baby, we're going to do X. One day, baby, we're going to travel to, such and such place. One day, right? And one day. And as you start thinking about it, as you get older, you find maybe you're dealing with knee pain, hip pain, back pain. You're dealing with all these physical ailments. Maybe you're overweight. Maybe, you're worried that you wouldn't be able to walk the streets in Italy as you saw yourself, or going to these mountainous regions and enjoying wine and all these wonderful things that you said one day would happen. And really, it's not the money that's keeping you from it. It's your health.
Now, Nick, is this a conversation you're having early on? I mean, you're not having it with I mean, you may be having it with me, but you'd be talking to someone Aaron's age, right? 50.
Yeah, so I was wondering how many years before retirement are you talking to people?
Yeah. So here's what's really wonderful about this exercise. You can have it at any age. I have this same conversation with my clients' kids. Now they're looking at it from sometimes a different viewpoint because they're seeing maybe their parents that didn't keep up with their health. So now they have cause to live life different. So how do you break freedom? How do you bring freedom to that? You know, it's wonderful you're maxing out your 401k. However, would it make sense to take $1,000 and book that towards your personal training sessions for the next 3 months? If you don't want to be a dependent, what are you doing about it? And who in your life have you given permission to actually speak that to you? You know, there's been several surveys that talk about how men in retirement, one of the hardest things that they go through is the realization they don't have any friends. And, you know, a lot of their ego and colleagues that they worked with for 30 years at Lockheed Martin, like those were their friends.
That's very true. That's something my dad went through, which is like the retirement depression.
Yeah, and it's a very real thing. So if we're having these very intentional conversations with you, which are not always easy, but you've given us permission to have those conversations with you, then what we're doing is we're trying to help you understand you don't have to be that dependent. You might have seen that in your parents' generation or your grandparents', but that doesn't have to be you. So living life on purpose, very intentionally, what do we do to make this work? And yeah, it gets harder sometimes as we get older. But if you were to ask my dad, you know, what best shape of his life in his 60s, okay, outside of high school, and he's got a couple of rules. One, you exercise for at least 10 minutes every day. You can miss one day, but you can never miss 2 days in a row. Does he want to do it? No. But he wants to be old to be able to help. He doesn't want to need help. That's a paradigm shift you have to have.
Yeah, and it's not easy to bring. My wife is a nurse practitioner, Nick, and she tells me all the time, people come in her office. There are people who drive to her office that are 95 years old. I mean, and then there are people who are 50 and in horrible shape. But the point is, she'll say, here's what you need to do. You know, you're pre-diabetic. You need to do this, this, and this. You need to change your diet, and you need to do it now. And then they'll come in 6 months later having not done a damn thing. It's hard when you're 68 all of a sudden become somebody who exercises or, you know, does all. I mean, we have habits. They're built in, and they're hard.
But Stacey, is it possible?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely possible.
If you've got a coach in your corner, if you've got accountability and you've got a good relationship life, it makes it more probable, not possible.
Okay. That's the best you can do anyway, right? I mean, all you can do is the best you can do. But having that extra, the coaching probably would help. What other besides health? Where would you go next?
Sure. So, you know, as amazing as it is, you know, people really don't focus on designing the relationship life. Okay. So I would go there next. And when I think about, again, men typically struggle in this area, just as we discussed, you know, what can you do more purposefully to make sure you've got right relationships in your life? So we would ask questions like, how would you rate your relationship life? Who makes up your relationship life? Can you list out your 10 best friends? Can you, if you've got children, can you rate the relationship 1 to 10 with each of your children? Can you rate the relationship with you and your wife today? If you were to make one, like the biggest relationship change in your life that would make the biggest impact this year, what would it be and what would it take to get it done?
Hold on, let me ask my wife that question real quick.
You know, actually, that's funny, Aaron, because Aaron and I are friends as well as coworkers, and we hang around a lot together. But you know what? Ask me what I'm doing this weekend, or ask Aaron, and we'll both say the same thing. I don't know. Ask the wife, because they're the ones who are planning everything. We just show up, you know. And so if something should happen to Sarah, and I do know a lot of people. I mean, we've been to a party every Saturday night for the last 5 weekends. But I don't really hang out with them. Now, my wife tonight is going out for a happy hour with a bunch of her girlfriends. I don't do that with other men. And if I didn't have her, I don't know that I'd have a social life. So what would you advise me to do in that situation, Nick?
Yeah. So, you know, I think number one is having a real talk with your wife. Hey, this is the potential obstacle I'm thinking about. What have you observed about this? If you've been married for any kind of meaningful time and you've got trust built in with your spouse, I believe that they're going to have insights into you. You might not like it, but they're probably going to have insights about you that you're not going to see yourself. If this is I'd start there. Ground zero is having the conversation with my wife. I'm concerned if I didn't have you in my life today, my relationship life really goes away, and I'm concerned about the impact that would have on me. After that, we start having more conversations around things that bring you joy, peace, and purpose. And this isn't kind of like new agey kind of guru stuff. This is really, what is it that makes you happy? What is the thing that you could get up? If work is not making you get up at 7 a.m. to get to work, what is it that you would want to get up for? Is it to spend more time with certain people? Is it to do a particular activity? I've got a client who is 78 years old who still plays in rec league softball. Every single Thursday night, they go out for a beer afterwards.
Yeah, there you go. And, actually, as you're saying this, I'm so glad you're doing this way, Nick, because I'm answering these questions in my own mind as you're saying them, And I know what my wife would say because she said it to me before. She said, why don't you go out and have beers with your buddies? In fact, I went to a bachelor party in Colombia a few months ago, and I was like, what do I want to go to a bachelor party for? And she goes, get off your ass and go get on the plane and go with these men to Colombia. And I had a hell of a great time. But if left to my own devices, I think I'd just sit here. And I don't know why I'm doing that. If I can recognize this as an issue, why aren't I going out and having beers with my buds?
Well, and to take that just one step deeper, Stacy, that's great to have beers with the buds, but do you have one or two of those buddies that if you were really struggling with something that you'd be able to have real talk with?
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Nick, are you going to send him a bill after this? That's only a consultation.
I'll tell you what, this is the most interesting conversation I've ever had with a money manager before because we haven't even talked about money. I mean, I think it's really fascinating stuff. And it makes me want to pay. Let's not get overboard. I was going to say pay for your services, but anyway, it is really fascinating. So we don't have a whole bunch more time, and I feel like I'm wasting a lot of it. What other kinds of topics would we be bringing up in this conversation?
Well, and I'm going to touch on something that is touchy. Okay, do you know the definition of politics?
No. What?
All right. Poly is many, and ticks are bloodsuckers. All right. I only have 3 jokes, and that was one of them. So if you didn't think that was funny,
does he?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. You are a politician.
It's all in good fun. It's all in good fun.
No. You be right.
But here's the reality. Here's the reality. We're in election season, right? And when I hear about people like my grandmother who passed away about a year ago. Okay, so she was Canadian. Had her green card for her whole life here in the United States and lived here roughly 70 years, okay? And so she'd complain about politics all the time, and my dad's response was, get your citizenship and vote. Do something about it. And I think in the same manner, we approach the community life. So we've talked about health life, we've talked about relationship life. Believe it or not, we also talk about aspirations in your retirement life. Okay. The goals don't go away just because maybe your career ended. What are the aspirations? But circling back, we get into community life. If you don't like something, what are you doing about it? How are you making a change? And to what extent do you want to make a change? Do you want to make an economic impact by giving to those charities and those organizations you really care about? Do you want to make a bigger impact and you're going to volunteer your time? Like I'm here in Marietta, Georgia, just north of Atlanta, and there's this organization called Must here that, they feed literally several 100,000 sandwiches to kids throughout the summer because they no longer have free breakfast and lunch at school. Mm-hmm. That's impact, right? What could you do to make an impact in your community life? If you're ranking that a 3 out of 10 and you're not happy about it, what are you specifically doing about it?
You are genuinely a coach.
Well, I mean, we hope to be. I coach juniors wrestling, and I'm very passionate about helping people win and live the best life they can. We have so much more opportunity and potential than we realize. And just because we age doesn't mean, the potential goes away. We might have to shift the potential, but that's a lot of mindset, right? And that's what a coach does. They help you with that mindset so that you can get to where you really want to go. And that all starts with questions. Do you remember the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People?
Yep.
So
Stephen Covey.
Stephen Covey. That's right. It's a book that changed my dad's life, my family's life, and our business forever. And there was one particular habit. I actually, my wife and I disciplined my kids. Hey, what habit should we be preaching right now or working on right now and practicing right now? And they know Daddy's favorite habit is the 5th habit. And the 5th habit is seek first to understand, then to be understood. And I think in our industry, especially, people aren't looking to be told what to do. They want to be heard, they want to be understood, and then they want to be guided. You're the hero of your own story. You don't need me to be your hero. You're the hero. I'm just that guide, that coach who's going to help you succeed. And that all starts with me understanding you, what you're about, goals, purpose, passion. Got to understand that stuff. So it starts with asking really great questions.
You're a great coach, Nick, and I don't say that lightly either. I don't like most of the people that come on this podcast, but you're really good at this. And by the way, I grew up in Avondale. I went to Avondale High School.
Oh, awesome. Yep. Did you know Coach Brian Haig?
No, this was it was a dirt floor, 1-room school at that time. I don't remember anyone from my high school.
Gotcha. All right. One of the greatest wrestling coaches in Harrison's history, or excuse me, in the state of Georgia, was a gentleman who was one of my mentors, Coach Brian Haig, who passed away just recently, but he was a coach at Avondale.
Oh, really? Well, I graduated high school in 1973, so that was a long time ago.
Yeah. So I think he was there in the 80s.
Anyway, so we're running a little low on time. What other things can we just talk about? All the stuff you said has been really good, though. Just really trying to figure out who you are, where you're going, and how to get there, right?
Yeah, sure.
And then so when you arrive at retirement, you're not just sitting there watching TV. You're already engaged in other parts of life.
Yeah. Well, let's transition this to the economic, right? So if we're marrying the qualitative life and we understand where you are from a qualitative nature and where you're trying to go, let's talk about how that matches and marries the quantitative part of that. Okay?
My wife would just say, marry rich.
Yeah. Well, that's funny. My wife said she'd never remarry for love. I said, what would you remarry for? Money?
I'm just refusing to get remarried.
Oh, don't be like that.
Yeah, you might end up with more money. But, so anyway, if we were to think about this, we need to map out our money matching, or our income need matching all of these wonderful things that, the charitable intent, the travel, the health and well-being, all these wonderful things. Well, many times we like to think just naturally in a straight line. Right. So if I think about, I've got $5,000 a month, bill, and that's what I budget towards is $5,000 a month. We have a hard time thinking about inflation and the impact of that $5,000. And that's why things like annuities fixed annuities can sound really, really good to a lot of people. If you've got a $5,000 or a $6,000 a month income need, and you look at your Social Security and you look at maybe a pension and you look that an annuity would be able to help make up the difference. The challenge is we don't think about inflation, and inflation, as we know over the last couple of years, it could be a killer. In our industry, we call it the silent killer. It creeps up on you over time. And so we like to think in straight, consistent lines, but the reality is retirement income really doesn't look like that. Typically, as we enter into our retirement life, what we have found with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients, the first 8 to 10 years, you're spending way more than what the proverbial 4% per year, in our industry would say, don't, withdraw 4% per year. Well, I actually would disagree with that. I think in those first couple of years, it's going to be okay if you spend a little more than that. Of course, it depends on what your goals are and what you're trying to achieve. But the reality is, if you're now doing those things that you said you really wanted to do, the someday, honey, I want to do these things, and one day we want to travel to here, and that's really where we're going. Well, then we should map our income towards doing those really high priority things in those first 8 to 10 years. And I would suggest that for many people, as they enter into retirement, and it's a purpose-driven retirement, that you should have permission and not feel guilty about spending more than what maybe many of the experts would say, just take out 4% and you'll be okay. But what we do know is that over the course of 8 to 10 years, retirement income or the needs for retirement income can start to slow down. You've had many of the experiences that you were looking for. Your experiential life maybe became very saturated, and maybe you do want a little bit more of that relaxation, a little bit more step back. You already have toys, gadgets, and gadgets, so you're not spending a lot of money towards stuff. You're probably even trying to get rid of stuff, right? And so we see retirement income go up in those early years only to kind of reset in later years, and I'm saying that's okay. Now, after that, we start seeing 5, 10, 15, depending on how old you are, years later, the income need starts to creep up again. And many times that's not just because of inflation, but it's health-related costs. Do we need a caregiver? Do we need, more supplements? Do we need, maybe assisted living in the future? Things like that. So that can, cause a bigger dent. So what I'm trying to convey is that we take the qualitative part of your life and all those things that you want to accomplish and do and all the impact you want to make, and we marry it towards an income that you can't outlive. But we have to understand there may be seasons or periods of time where your income need is much greater and other times it's not. And that's going to be okay as long as you have the coach by your side who's helping you make sure that you're not doing anything that's going to cause you long-term harm. So that's how we would marry the economic or the quantitative part of your life with the qualitative as you're entering into that retirement phase.
Do you not like annuities?
I am completely annuity agnostic, meaning, for the right person, I think they can make a lot of sense. What I've got a problem with today, if I'm being just really, really candid with you, it's the people who are opposing more as the fiduciary who are recommending people put 100% of their money in equity indexed annuities, which I think is probably the most oversold product in the United States today. I don't have a problem with the product itself. I probably used 2 or 3 of them last year for clients. The challenge is when anyone starts recommending 100% of your money to do one specific thing that can lock you up, as you're entering retirement, I do have challenges with being okay with that.
Interesting. Yeah, I've thought about annuities myself, but another problem I have too, Nick, is one of the reasons I don't want to retire is because I make a lot of money and I spend a lot of money, and I don't want to be on a fixed income. I don't even know. I'm not such an idiot that I don't realize what my expenses are, but when I look at Social Security, Social Security would barely pay the property taxes on my house, and the insurance. I live in Florida; it's very expensive. And so I don't want to quit my job because I don't want to cut back. I don't want to scrimp and save. I'm not used to that. I buy whatever the hell I want. And I don't, how would you respond to that?
Stacy, you're living life on purpose. Don't stop. Enjoy it. Just recognize there may be a period of time where that changes, and that will be okay. I think having conversations with your spouse about what the future would look like if you did stop is a healthy practice and a good exercise, but that doesn't mean you have to say, if 5 years from now I decide to stop, that this is what life could look like. That doesn't mean you have to be done in 5 years. It just means you've thought it out, and that's okay. So if you love what you're doing, like we said at the beginning, why stop? Enjoy it.
I think I'm going to have to transfer my account to you. No, as if I have a financial advisor already, which I don't. But you're just really good, man. I've really enjoyed talking to you. I know we've got to be out of time, but do you have anything else you want to contribute? Oh, one thing we needed to do, Miranda, tell everybody why you're a politician, because you mentioned that, so we have to explain it. Why are you a politician?
Yeah, so I'm involved in local politics because I think local politics is where you can make a difference. And so when Nick is talking about, finding meaning, finding stuff that matters to you, fighting for, what matters to you, I like doing local politics because that's where you can do things like, make sure you preserve the park. We had a big fight. They were going to destroy a park to build a new water tower. And, we found a solution and that kept the park and had adequate place for the water tower. And so I think it sounds really silly, but at the same time, like this is a thing that affects people's lives. And so, when we're talking about having your time, having the ability, having, that 1 to 10 scale, right? Doing local politics really puts me at about a 7 on that scale. And then I'm also involved in local nonprofits, and that bumps it up to a 9 on that scale because of the community involvement and how much I love doing this work and the fact that I have the time and flexibility to do it.
Miranda, I love how you just stated that. That is so in line with what our beliefs are. And, it's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to roll up your sleeves and do something about it. So kudos to you for being the example.
And, and when you were talking, Miranda, I literally heard passion and purpose.
Exactly. Yes.
That's very cool. And what makes me passionate is berating politicians.
We love it. We love it.
We're a perfect combination.
Yeah, for sure.
Nick, do you have any closing thoughts? We do. I've really enjoyed this conversation, but I'm afraid we are going to have to close it out. Do you have any closing thoughts for us?
Yeah. I love what you're doing and what this show is about. You are helping real people think different about money. And that's what we're about. Getting people to think different about money. Think different. Don't, just because someone says it, just because you read it in a newspaper. As my dad said when I was growing up, be a student, not a follower. The book you don't read can't help you. Keep searching, keep educating yourself, and I think you'll be able to make a really excellent impact in your life and the life of those that you really care about. So thanks for having me.
You are such an inspiration. We will definitely have you back. If you will come back again, we would love to have you. In the meantime, guys, we are out of time, but we are never out of topic. Isn't it funny how that is? Dig a little deeper. You're going to find links to lots more info in our show notes. And remember, if your goal is to make more, to spend less, to retire rich, well, your online home is moneytalksnews.com. And don't forget to check out Miranda's online home as well. That is Miranda Marquit, MARQUIT.com, and contribute to her campaign. And you can visit Nick at his website. That is yourretirementcoach.com. If you didn't get it, it's going to be in our notes. If you got a question, comment, or topic you'd like to suggest, tell us about it. You can email us at hello@moneytalksnews.com. And one final thing, if you like what we do, then do a little something for us. Subscribe to our podcast. Takes you 2 seconds, really helps us. And tell your friends too. Okay, so tell your friends, get on social media, be passionate about getting more listeners to our podcast. I'm Stacy Johnson.
I'm Miranda Marquit.
I'm Aaron Freeman.
And thanks again for being here, Nick. We really enjoyed having you. We're counting the minutes until you return to us.